Joe is joining by Zoom.
she's on.
Okay, well then let's get started.
Yeah.
We'll start with roll call. Dan,
Here.
Lucas,
Here.
Harold,
Present.
Joe,
Here.
and I'm Mark, the manager, and we have a full board. Given that there's no audience, I think we can skip audience. Oh, is there anybody online that wants to make any comments?
No.
No. So we can skip audience comments and get right to the budget. Let me start with a
Can you
couple.
allow me to
comments.
share my screen?
Oh, sorry. Hold on a second.
Thank you. Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not a problem. Is there really any reason to tie the amount of the assessments to the to the bottom line of total expenditures? I think we can just raise assessments rate of inflation about 3.5%. And however the total expenditures turn out, they turn out. I would actually make the following comment. If we change 412,000 going into reserve to 305,000, it produces exactly a 3.5% increase. So, it's I just like us to work towards the target of keeping the increase to the rate of inflation after the last 2 years of shall we say, mega increases. So, and as far as I can see, it's very doable.
It is, we can definitely back out numbers based on a flat percentage that you want to increase. I do want to remind you, because VC 1 or 10, whichever we're calling it, was paid off. So 5.14, I corrected that. I put 5.41 in the beginning. It's 5.14 acres that were removed from your O&M. So by taking that away, you're already at a 2.2 increase throughout the remainder of the lots and acreage in there. So right out of the gate, you're at 2.2. So of that 7.6 that you see on there currently, 2.2 of that is automatic.
What tab are we on right now?
No
Zero.
tab.
Okay.
I'm just explaining.
Okay.
Probably 001 is the name.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
be going through the 001 tab, but if
Okay.
you click on the assessment detail, those two connect each other,
Okay.
right? Anything we put on the 001 tab automatically is going to carry over to that assessment detail tab, which is going to either raise percentage or lower percentage.
Does it have to?
Does it have to?
Does it have to?
I mean, no, we can do whatever we want as
Okay.
far as that. If you're looking at, let's say the 2.2, and then Mark says, okay, we want to keep it at 3%, then we back out the numbers to get there, however we need to do that.
Well, but I'm saying, no, my point is your original draft budget produces an ending balance of $1.122 million. And I'm saying, hey, if you take 107,000 out of that, guess what? You get the 3.5% increase. And you still have $1 million at the end.
Yeah, and we can do that. The only reason we tie it is because most boards want to see when we're putting it in, what does that mean?
No, I
for
understand.
residents? That's the only reason we tie
I
it.
understand. I'm just saying, maybe it's time to think outside the box.
Absolutely. So if we take what you're talking about is that reserve at the bottom, line 98 on your Excel spreadsheet, if you're looking at it, Brenda has it up. If we take that 412 and you're saying lowering it to, what would you like to lower it to?
If you make it 305, then your increase is 3.5%.
What are you looking at for? Sorry, I'm
Dash
looking.
01, I think.
I don't have lines.
That one right
Okay,
there.
Okay.
You change that to 305,
Where's
you're at 3.
He's exactly right. It's
Yeah.
3.5% increase. Which all that does is last year you put in 412,000 into your reserves. This year you would put in 305. And it's not earmarked for anything specific, as we talked about. You set up a a separate reserve account instead of tying it to your general fund, like it was done in the past. And it's not earmarked for anything specific, however, the board can earmark stuff if they want.
This is our rainy day kind of savings
Mhm.
stuff that we put aside
Oh.
every,
The reason you did this one though, was primarily built around the maintenance facility. Is the reason that number was high. You weren't contributing that high of a number previous years. It was, I think the year before that, we did 300 or 350 maybe. I'd have to go back and look, but it's never been as high as it was in 24 because we were centering that number around the maintenance facility because we didn't have numbers yet.
okay.
The reserves is really for the purpose of refurbishing or redoing infrastructure here and facilities that have worn out, like splash pad or sidewalks or
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
pool motors and all that kind of stuff.
So
Gotcha.
what I did was I went down, I pretty much, there was that was one of them, the 305, or what you wanted to contribute. The rest were your essential, you had a couple of contracts that had a 3% or 2% increase in them, those I put in. Other than that, you really didn't have any increases. Like I said, the biggest push was the reserve, that was your biggest push. So if you deleted that 305 out of there, you'd come with a 2.2.
From rolling into BC one.
Correct, that is correct. So that's kind of where we're at. I do have some information for you. I don't know how this may or may not play into the budget. Looks like Mark, you may have it in front of you. You may want a different, an updated one. So these are regarding bonds and everything. If we did a bond for, David did provide me some information. So for residential, if you have vertical, you have to have at least 90% to qualify for a bond. And David did confirm that last night, that out of the parcels that are out there, the vacant parcels, we're at, I think, 90.4%. So you do qualify to be able to get a bond. And that's what it looks like. If we were to do, and she kind of broke it out to give you some ideas, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. And then the very bottom is your net bond proceeds after everything is factored out of it. And then up at the top, it's your number of units. If you go with a 3 million, you're talking about a $78, multifamily 25-foot lot, and they go down and it tells you what that lot would be looking at as an increase. And then your total annual is the total, and then 4 million and 5 million. So they broke that out for you.
I'm gonna have a question for our lawyer. Is it possible to have different assessment methodology for this bond as opposed to the other bonds? I'm thinking in terms of the maintenance facility, everybody kind of benefits the same from that. And just make that flat across the board. Then I think your average actually works out to about $100 per lot. Yeah, so $7 a month, which is something I think is a little easier sale to the community.
Mike, if he's online, he might have that answer. If he's not, I can definitely get that answer for you from Leah and Liz. I don't see, that's not my wheelhouse, but I don't see why we couldn't do a different methodology for that bond. But again, I don't have a definitive answer for you. And I don't know, is Mike on the line?
No, you specifically told him he didn't have to come.
I can text Liz too.
That's okay, we can do that in a regular
But
meeting.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
with
this is really for the regular meeting.
Yes. So, and again, we still have, you're gonna approve this, we still have another run through for it and all of that. But this is essentially everything you need in here, your landscaping numbers, all of that. We are trending under budget right now. So, everything looks good. And essentially that's why everything I put in, leaving that 400 and something, you were at a 7% increase. But you lower that number to 305, as Mark suggested, you're down even more. Okay.
My only thought out of abundance of caution, again, knowing that from when we propose to when we adopt, we can only trim.
That's right.
Since we're setting, I really like the idea of just, our reserve contribution, that's kind of the big dial we're turning. Do we maybe set it for 4% just to give us, a couple more months to just make sure between the bond stuff, if there's, anything else unexpected, with the stated goal of when we adopt, dialing it back down to 3.5, and that's our inflation, and just give ourselves possibly a little more cushion.
Yeah, I mean, there is one elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is $582,000 of projected collections. It's already almost May. That's a lot of money we haven't collected yet.
Correct.
So that is one elephant in the room.
The other thing too, and I always just tell everyone, if there is even a 1% increase, we have to mail letters out to every resident. So if the board's intent is to not set a huge high water mark, I really advise against creating pandemonium in your community. Because a lot of people, even though you explain it, they don't understand that you can still cut it back down.
Right.
Before we get to that final, but they get that letter and panic sets in that all of a sudden now you're increasing it X amount of percent. So again, just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Realistic number.
Sure, and I'd say even in light of last year where we kind of had two options that we ended up not being able to claw that back, I'll retract. I like 3.5.
Okay, do we want to do the line by line thing?
Sure.
I mean, I would suggest what we focus on are the items Angel has highlighted in yellow. I think the rest are rather automatic.
Correct. What I did, and I don't know if you can see the notes, I put notes by each one. Engineering, I increased. But again, that can be dropped. It's just based on what we're gonna have them go through next year. The maintenance facility, no matter which way you decide to go, there's gonna be engineering costs with that. Some of that can be covered under the bond, if they do get a bond. And then there would be ancillary costs that wouldn't be able to be covered by the bond. So I increased that, 10,000. Legal, I left the same. Legal's impact on it would be not as much as engineering. I'm still gonna have some impact there, but I didn't feel like we needed to increase that. The next one is your recording secretary. I think we could lower that because we have gone away from verbatim minutes. So that can be lowered because you're not paying that extra fee to do verbatim minutes anymore. Then the next one is your auditing. I just increased that 600 because they are increasing this year, auditing your audit companies. General liability insurance went up a little bit.
That's substantial.
Yeah, and that's everything included. That's your general liability, your POL and property. And then there's another one at the top with expenditures that I wanted us to really see what we wanted to do was meeting space. Oh, there it is. So meeting room rental, we have 7,500 in there. Obviously this space is going to go away at some point. They were showing it today. So I think 7,500 is a good amount to leave in there. I don't know if we need to. We've kind of looked at different avenues, libraries, different items. Obviously, if we have a field maintenance facility, that takes care of your problem there. So I don't know if we need to raise that or not. The last time we checked into room rentals was probably last year, with different spaces available, because we knew we have this one for free. So that's something we need to, and I'll check into before we get to the next one, just to kind of get some figures around.
I would like to think about maybe collecting the supervisor monthly meeting fee.
200.
Yeah. And then, but I'd like to ask Mike, who may have a different opinion than our previous attorney, about using the ranch as a meeting space.
Okay. Could do that.
Using the.
First Nature Ranch.
Oh, understood. Oh, yeah, that'd be a great place to meet.
But
Yeah, nice big
Our
room.
previous attorney insisted that even if I wasn't getting any money or any benefit, that it was a bad idea.
Thank you. Sure. So we'll check into that. And if that's a viable option, obviously, that would be a great,
Yeah.
great space. So I just wanted you to keep an eye out on that. It's 7,500. I know it's not a lot, but it could be used other areas or even taken out of the budget if we didn't need it. So that's the other thing to look at. What I have highlighted here is miscellaneous collection costs. That changes with the number that we put into the budget. So that's just the collection cost from the county. So that changes. I just highlight it because I like to see where it's going as we put numbers in. The other thing I did under our landscape services.
Oh, so,
Oh, go
so
ahead.
if we stick to 3.5%, that goes down.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, because that was up before than what we're looking at now.
Yeah, it's just a flat percentage of what they collect.
It's 4%, or no,
2%.
It's 2%, sorry. So it's 2% of your annual collection. So if we lower our budget, that number goes down. We raise it, that number goes up. It fluctuates with the numbers we put in. The other one I highlighted is under landscape services. It's miscellaneous services. We budget 50,000. I've looked over your last 3 years' budget and you've never hit 50,000. I honestly don't.
I would
know.
like to keep it at 50,000 because we have lots of areas that we've talked about refurbishing. They're way overdue. It's
And
time we
that,
did
yep,
them.
perfectly fine. Just wanted to make sure you understood. That's why I highlighted that one.
Well, I mean, I'm on 2 pages here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Well, no, I understand that. Oh, what account are we putting all of these tree services proposals we get from Benchmark to cut this down? Or I think
Under
we've got several for this month.
R&M trees and trimming.
So that's already in trees and trimming.
Yes, sir. That's 40,000 we budget for
And,
that.
and we're still gonna go, well, depends what we approve today, but
Correct.
we're still looking to be well under budget on that.
Yeah, and I like to put projected in there, and we added that column off to the right there where you can set it to actuals or budget. I like to set some things to budget if it's a contract, because you know you're only gonna go to the, right? But if we keep spending the way that we are, looking at the actuals, which in some cases we will, some cases we won't. So.
But look at
that's-
the 2023 actual. It was 54,000
Mhm.
because we had, community-wide tree trimming. And if we don't have it this year, then we should probably have it next fiscal year.
So we've left 40,000 in there. That's where I left that. And then I just highlighted the 50 as miscellaneous services, just to kind of show you that. Operation and maintenance, R&M ponds and Buck Lake. We raised that to 100,000, and what's coming out of there, now that we have been made aware that we own even the golf course ponds, there's a lot of those that we've never treated, the golf course is never treated, and so Brad's having to start treating those, which means more chemicals and all that, plus he's treating the conservation area, and then we have the Buck Lake committee agreement, which is not that high, but that's what all comes out of that, which is why you see it now, we're already over budget on that, because all of it comes out of there.
So this is, are these ponds on like golf course property, but they're still, we found our responsibility, I guess?
I guess there had been an argument, or not an argument, but a kind of a debate, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think with the previous chair and the golf course maintenance people that we were saying, no, those are your responsibility, and they were saying kind of like, no, you own those ponds, you're responsible for them. So David actually did the research, and the district is responsible for the maintenance.
As part of the drainage.
Well, yeah, we have the permit on them, and you do have in some cases where we have the permit, but it's someone else's maintenance issue, but that's not the case here.
Yeah.
The case here is we own them for infrastructure and we have the obligation for operation and maintenance.
Okay, because looking at, like a property map, most of them show up as within Gulf Preserve LLC property. I don't see any kind of, easements for maintenance or anything like that. It's,
Yeah, David.
The South Florida Water Management District permit is what we looked at, reviewed as well as some of the recorded flats at that language, that CDD was the only maintenance.
okay.
So that's why we increased that, and that was the largest increase aside from leaving your reserves the same. Was that one, and then your reserve. And other than that, those are the only additions that I increased outside of your normal traps.
I wonder
Okay,
if we should not combine R&M ponds and Buck Lake with R&M invasive plant maintenance, because it's, I don't know,
want it
because,
combined?
well, no, I mean,
Is it
because
separate now?
it's separate now.
Mhm.
But some of the pond maintenance is water management, but some of it is also managing invasives, is it
Yeah,
not?
it's a combination.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I don't know, it may be cleaner or not to combine them. So it's because you're kind of spending money on the same thing. It's probably going to be, I suppose, if you spend it on only the ponds and only Buck Lake on the water, then you can keep it separate, but everywhere else, I mean,
Yeah,
It's-
the plant invasives that you have on here for 105,000, that was strictly based on the conservation areas where Brad's going in, and also too, keeping in mind that, Brad's one person, and keeping up with it like they're supposed to be keeping up with it, it's not attainable. So at some point, we may have to hire a vendor to come in and do another sweep through. And that's why we kept that 105,000 in there, just in case that we needed to do that. If you needed a vendor to come in, kind of do another sweep, have Brad following behind like he's doing now, that stuff comes back so quickly that it's very hard for one person, and he can't go in there alone. He's got to bring another staff member with him, which takes away from what they're doing out in the field, because it's dangerous to have him go in there by himself.
Where is we have a contract for somebody who does the invasives on the lake, right?
No,
No,
that's, when we started this contract and brought Field over, you had a pond person, which was Brad Benson. He is certified with his spray application and all that, and he is the only one who does invasives and treat your ponds. We did look at, I think maybe 2 years ago, we did look at getting proposals from pond companies to come in and just maintain your ponds, but the board didn't want to move forward with that at the time.
yeah, because I mean, I'm looking at the projection is we're gonna spend 10 grand and the budget is 100 grand.
well, because we just spent 200,000 recently to manage invasives, because we had to hire somebody because it had gotten out of hand as our staffing management of the invasives
Where
was
did we see that
insufficient.
200,000?
No, so that was 3 years ago. And I have a
okay.
question, this has come up a few times. So as I remember, we had basically 2 proposals. One was for like 50,000 and one was 100,000. The board voted on the cheaper one, and then that got shot down by our, what's the consultant's name?
Catherine Bowman.
Catherine,
Yes, and basically had to come back and then,
it was 200, it was 195.
194.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
that predates 2020.
Well, it was 2022 and 23, I thought.
So what happened was once we did that with, what is their name? That's,
Catherine Bowman.
no, but who's the company we
No.
used?
Bill-
Aquatic Wetland Management, Bill Snipes.
Yeah.
Snively?
Snidely. So what we did was they came in, did that, it was like 194,000. And then what the board decided was, okay, because she told us it's going to come back very quickly and Brad is not gonna be able to keep up with it. According to the requirements of St. John's Water,
South Florida.
South Florida. So what we did was the board wanted to leave at least 105,000 in there if we had to hire them again to kind of come in and do another cleanup or something like that. That's why you don't see very much out there because we haven't hired a company to do it.
But we may need to, because we may be required to by South Florida Water Management District
Correct.
in the coming year. So I would rather leave that money there.
Sure, I agree with leaving it there, and I wanted to bring that up just in that, you know, there had been a considerably cheaper, or less expensive proposal. And, I don't know with, Ms. Bowman, how much, weight her recommendation was, whether it was, she says it's a good idea, we need to do that versus, because that hit and what, you know, the 8% inflation year, and that was, you know, that's
Yeah.
everyone's favorite thing to complain about is how much we spend on weeds. So I agree with leaving the money in there, but I don't know if in the future, if we do find that we need to do that again, if, I don't know how, they're. I don't know if, yes, we have our consultant and we have them to tell us before we make a mistake. I don't know what I'm saying, I guess, that there might be a cheaper way to do it, but.
No, we can get proposals again, but
There are landscape companies who claim they can do the work, but they're not trained to do it.
Okay.
And there's firms that do strictly eradication of nuisance plants. That's
Right.
why Catherine recommended Bill for the overall climbing firm, because it's uncontrollable if it gets out of control.
Right.
That was one of the 2 projects I had in my list to add was minimum of $100,000 to get it back out of here, to almost do like a shock treatment of a pool.
correct.
Just to see if, because Brad's one guy, I know how he does it
Hey,
as
he's
it is.
barely doing it.
And Catherine found another hotspot at the golf course driving range. It's not gonna take long for that to spread in the main area this summertime, so I had that as a item to make sure we don't drop this year. So,
Well, we may want to have, what was it, aquatic?
aquatic team management.
Bill Snively. We may want to contact Bill Snively and ask him for a review of where we are. Because before we have to spend $200,000, maybe we want to spend less now instead of more later before it gets more out of hand.
He wasn't willing to give me a number because he said, I want to walk through there first. before I give you a number."
Yeah, the last number he gave us after looking at it, I don't know how many months ago it was like right around 94,000.
Well,
That's
I would like
less
to,
expensive.
I would like to understand where we are, because if that was a few months ago and we're already at 100, close to 100 grand, then it's probably in our best interest to spend this money now and hopefully, because what we did last time with the 194 was we spent about half of it in the previous fiscal year and the other half in the next fiscal year. That's the way it worked out in terms of the timing of the work.
So that is why that number's in there. And then your other one, your big pusher is again, your reserves. And Brenda, did you lower? Yeah, she lowered it to 305, same as I did. And if you look at your assessment detail, that brings it down to exactly 3.5% increase. Based off of what we just went through.
Any amounts anybody wants to change?
I have one condition.
Yeah, what do you got?
Based on your prior engineer's assessment on the alleyways in 2020, he looked at all the different neighborhoods, C1 and C2 was the top priority, which was done last year. In 2025, he was recommending neighborhood A1 and G be done. And based on the recent bid we had last year and the linear feet of alleyways, we're looking at $850,000 for those 2 neighborhoods.
That's A1
And G is in golf, so.
Green,
and green.
Ashley Park and Green neighborhood.
So whether you want to split those over 2 fiscal years, but at least for planning numbers and the linear feet of alleyways, it's roughly $850,000 of today's dollars, not knowing what things will continue to excavate.
And are there any other facilities aside from those alleyways and thinking about, invasive plant management, engineering wise that we need to be thinking about putting into reserves? I mean, using reserves to,
I was thinking
Yeah.
25,000 for cattail removals and just general maintenance of stormwater systems. Pipe cleaning, camera work, things like that. It's 25,000 a year for drainage maintenance. You did a bunch of cattails last year on 3 or 4 of the ponds, as you mentioned, the community, that was done for $7,000. There's many ponds left that are getting out of control, so 25 can disappear pretty quickly.
is the 100,000 number under ponds and Buck Lake accounting for that or not so much?
Accounting for what were you saying, the golf course ponds?
Typical stormwater maintenance, which would be cattails, pipe cleaning, fixing some skimmer blades, things like that.
Because
No.
the 100,000 is based on this fiscal year's projection. And this fiscal year's projection does include our projection, what we've expended already. Isn't the pipe cleaning that we've done coming out of that? And the cattail removal we've done part of that 84,000?
It is.
So maybe the 100,000 already includes that?
It can, because that's what we're coding it for, because you don't have a line specific for,
Stormwater
pipe
management.
grade, yeah. So that is where it's coming from currently, and we can keep it coming from there.
Well, we've added, 15,000 to it. Based 15,000 to the projected amount for this year, where we've had 2 sets of pipe cleanings and variety of cattail removal already, right?
If there's 35 ponds, we probably get 5 of them. So there's a handful, there's a lot left.
Some ponds are bigger than others. I think the one that I remember doing is hole 2 and 3, that big pond that wraps around, which was pretty large. The one on 12, which Jorge and Brad took care of on the resident side, is
Those are not very good.
it's pretty large, but depending on what areas you want to do, it could be a big job. But, yeah, it's like this pond by pond basis,
I think if we have a plan, we can put a plan in place, and whatever number we have budgeted, that's what they'll work within to get those things done. We can prioritize them.
I just don't know about the alleyway, how that's. gonna be.
Yeah, that's the
So-
biggest.
Have you reviewed those alleyways, David?
I'll be honest with you, before I get to my topic next. for the
Meeting.
CDD meeting, we've been buried in FEMA grants this past 30 days, so I did not get out and do my inspections. Apologize, but I did go back to the report that Steve Boyd did to make sure at least I had some planning numbers for this topic discussion, whether you want to earmark it as, Lucas would say, for a rainy day, but they were recommended to be done in 2025. Now, I can go out there and they may still look good. We could shoot another year, but I will get out there between now and next month. But I know we're planning to put some numbers in a spreadsheet for planning purposes. So we did run the numbers from last year, roughly $100 per linear foot for neighborhood C1 and C2. And we just use that same unit cost for the remaining number of neighborhoods that need to be done in the next year to 5 years.
So with the curb work that was proposed and tabled for G neighborhood, that was that long ago, do you have just any general sense from at least that small area that you might have looked at for the?
We did an alternative, which I'll get out to discuss in the meeting, Dan, but we came up with a milling and resurfacing option as a cheaper version.
Well, yeah, my question was that yeah, I understand you haven't been out there, in the last couple of weeks, but in the last maybe couple of months, you were in that one neighborhood. And then I know you weren't doing a detailed folks inspection of, the condition of the alleyways as a whole at the time.
Yeah, I was looking at Blazing Star, the area we're gonna be talking about again tonight, and that, that's where I'm gonna come back with that alternative that we got a preliminary bid on, and it's not cheap either, but to be, so I didn't drive the rest of that alleyway when we were looking at Blazing Star that day.
Okay.
So just my kind of opinion, I know the road construction company recommends we get it done with whatever next year or next 5 years, but I think with the reserves that we're putting away, we just keep that in mind this year. I wouldn't say we increase that or, you know, but a portion of that should be allocated to the future developments of those roads at some point.
Well, that's the purpose of building reserves.
Right, no, I'm just saying, because you're putting reserves in, but you, at the time, you don't know if you're gonna use it for something, but obviously we have something in the future, right, so, but,
We know we're going to use it for something, we just don't know what. we're
right,
gonna use
but
it
I'm just,
for.
yeah, so it's.
And we keep on year by year finding additional things that have totally fallen apart and that we have to spend a whole lot of money to refurbish or replace.
Yes, like our white fence.
Mm.
Well, it's one of the reasons I tossed out the idea of if we go the bond route to acquire the maintenance facility, actually it was Mike's idea, that you consider other big time capital projects and maybe do a bigger bond issue to cover some of these things. Then you don't have the problem.
When you have expense year after year, that's just the
True.
residents have to pay for.
True.
So it's either build it into a bond and everybody has to pay for it all the time, or it's increase the budget when you have something you need to make sure it gets
It-
happening.
I like to think of it as nice, level, predictable costs versus shock ups and downs. That's how I would look at that. But that's more a topic for the main meeting. I mean, really, in terms of the budget, I'm not hearing any comments that people want to change numbers.
Was that all?
Well,
you
I have one thing I could point out. We're talking about getting it down to 3.5% to follow consumer price index inflation. And I believe building inflation might have been higher than the consumer product one. But at any rate, with the increase at 7.6%, the highest increase would be $275. That would be the biggest increase for the, I forget what neighborhood I looked up, but I was looking at that sheet, with the proposed amounts. And the biggest one went from, one second here, bear with me.
But that must be E.
From 3627 to 3902. Most of them went up less than $150. So 7.6% versus 3.5 is not huge in number of dollars to each homeowner, but it is kind of huge to our budget because, as you said, we have more alleyways coming up. And I'm not clear the money for the I know we put money in reserve anticipating the Buck Lake maintenance facility, but I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
I think you're getting at the 7.6 versus the 3.5, isn't?
Were you saying
Oh.
to maintain the 412 instead of bringing it down to maintain the original 7.6% instead of the 3.5%, Joe?
Well, I'm not sure exactly, but I tend to think yes, because it's not that big of an increase. It's not like people are paying $10,000 a year and we're increasing it by $700. Most of the homes pay $2,000, a little more, a little less. And so 7% is not a huge amount. And it's more than we would like, but if we could do that one more year, I'm thinking going forward, we might not have to raise it much at all. But it's, you can pay them, what's the expression? You can pay them today or you can pay them next week,
Yeah,
So,
I'm actually following on from a conversation Carol and I had, I think it was on Facebook, that before I was on the board. Where we were talking about the massive increases and we were talking about our history on the board. And I can't remember, I think it was you who made the comment, maybe we should have just been increasing rate of inflation all those years and we wouldn't have had this shock increase. And yes, I'm now in complete agreement with that. We should go after rate of inflation increases every year. Put the extra money in reserves, okay? But, you know, that's
So I,
a prudent way to do it. After the huge increases that this body has done in the community the last 2 years, we don't need to go out and, you know, again, do something double the rate of inflation. That's,
well, I agree with you, but we had a lot of catching up to do from, what was it, 7 years of keeping it at no increase?
agreed.
Right, so we had what was our last year, was 30% or something like that?
28,
28%. So kind of in between of just keeping it at 7.6 like we have now, instead of going back to what inflation is, because just one increase for that year, I don't know if we're all caught up and we have a lot of expenses ahead of us.
But we've done
So,
2 years, not 1 year. Right,
We increased last year and the year before,
yeah, big time.
but you hadn't increased in 20 years prior. Or
What?
not 20,
8 or 9.
eight,
yeah.
nine, not 10 years prior to that, you hadn't increased at all.
So we had a really big increase 2 years ago
Mhm.
and a big increase last year.
Last year.
we were at like 15 the year before, so around there.
No, 2 years ago was a big jump. It's less
So
of a
2
jump.
years ago was the
Yes.
biggest one, and then after that.
Yes, so the lowest, so for Ashley Park went from 454 to 594, but then to 685.
So what's the percentages? That's what I'm trying to remember. I thought-
Yeah, I
Oh.
don't have it here. I think it was
Dan,
12 something
answer your
percent.
question.
That's what,
I,
yeah.
I'm not like, I don't like looking at percentages anyways. How much is it gonna cost you extra a month?
Right.
Yeah.
Because percentages can be very misleading.
Yes.
So I have written down alleyway repairs, cattail removal, conservation area maintenance, drainage maintenance, and then the CDD maintenance facility is gonna be all over the fence tonight. Those are what I had down for budget purposes. So I gave you the alleyway costs, the oral climbing front, and then 100,000. The cattail maintenance and stormwater, 25,000 for budget purposes.
So let's just call it $1 million. All right. You got 850 for the streets, right? And then, I mean, we're pretty close, right? So,
Yep, 25,000 more. It was a signing.
okay,
bonus.
so yeah. Still gotta go to Vegas there, David.
Well, I agree. I don't like going by percentages either. I prefer using real numbers. And then if they don't work out, then we can cut back. But just to shave everything by a certain percent, although I realize you were talking about just cutting the reserve back. But
I think the using percentage is comparable to what inflation is, so it's kind of a 1-for-1, not really 1-for-1, but
The
But-
problem is, we're all paying different, we have many different unit types.
Right.
And so it's hard to really, that's why percentages is easier, because it's almost more, on most properties, it's more uniform, right?
but it's good, the people whose property values are higher are getting taxed more or pay more out for the bond, right?
Right.
Bigger lot.
Yeah,
right?
but if you're doing a dollar amount, you have 15 different dollar amounts to think about, because it's all different lot types.
Yeah.
So that's why it becomes confusing, and that's why I like percentages better.
So are we going to, what are we adding in here? Because right now with the change, the only change we've made, we're at a 3.5% increase. Now you have the items that David threw in. I think the 25,000 we have covered under, I increased that one line to 100,000. I think you have that covered. The 100,000 in cattails.
We said we wanted to leave that. I think it's the reserve other, that's still the question. To keep it at 412 or to move it back down to whatever it was, 30, whatever,
Real fine.
305. So I'm kind of in favor of leaving it at 412. I don't really, I would, it'd be lovely to keep it at the 3.5%, because it's a more palatable number. And my only concern is that we're going to be left holding the bag, because we're going to have expenses that cannot, where it doesn't cover.
perhaps I'll unretract
Let's,
my comment.
let's look at the bottom line again. This says we will have $1.122 million left over at the end of next year. If we take $107,000 out of that, we will still have $1,015,000 left over at the end of next year. Guys, $1,015,000 is plenty of rainy day money to have.
If you take away David's estimates, we would have basically zero money.
I think a lot of those are already built into here, though.
Not the
Not the
roads.
Not the
Oh,
alleyways.
Alleyway, I agree.
Okay, so knowing that we maybe over the next 2 to 3 years would be spending in the ballpark of 800,000 that isn't in our budget for A and G alleyways. And assuming that most of the maintenance, the pond, the invasives, the cattails are for the most part covered in the other budget line items.
Well, I hear you say 100,000 for cattails, but do you mean that to be climbing fern, or is that separate from?
So we have 105 in for climbing fern and all that.
Okay, that's already in there.
I
Okay.
increased the other repair and maintenance, under pond and Buck Lake. I increased that from 20,000 to 100,000.
All right.
So that should
And all I
take
got left
care.
is the alleyways.
All we need to determine is the alleyways and their reserve amount, how they want to do that. I think I've got your other two items.
Right. If we want to look at percentages, we're talking about adjusting that reserve contribution, 30,000 and that is about a percentage increase.
Yeah.
So if we went to 320, that would be 4%. Which was the first thing I said like 45 minutes ago.
I also like to say, if we're trying to get back to the inflation rate, going straight to it is probably not the best idea. If we go to the 7.6 and then next year whatever it is, we go to it. But if we go straight to it and then next year we increase, people are gonna be like, well, why are you increasing above inflation rate? Well, maybe because we didn't budget correctly and it could look bad on us.
I think you need to look at it too. You had a really large increase 2 years ago. Last year was lower, right? We still increased and it was still a good chunk, but it was lower than that one. So I think if you keep gradually going down, and as Mark and Carol, both of you stated, that's what most districts do every year. It's at least a 2 to 3% increase to cover inflation, and then that money just kind of goes into your reserves if it's not used. But to go without increasing at all, that's absurd because everything goes up every year to some degree.
Yeah, that was the historical mistake.
Mhm.
And I'm saying now is the time to get back to normal and sort of target rate of inflation.
Rather do it more slowly than just go straight to the.
What would you all like to do?
Well, I mean, can I ask one question? So if we're gonna use the lower number at 3.5%, and let's say something comes up and we don't have enough money for it, so we ought to start making a list of what things we're gonna cut if that happens.
Well, I mean,
Correct.
yes, we have the million plus that's in reserves right now. I mean, if it's a hurricane knocks down 200 trees, I mean, there's other, I want to, use the B word again. There's, bond special assessments. There's other ways to recover that versus, across the board, budget increases. I still like 4%.
And I like the 7.6%. I mean, I don't like it, but I think it's the most reasonable. It's the most,
You're running.
You hear that, everybody? We
It's the
love
most-
raising taxes.
You're running for reelection, right?
I don't know. Undecided. Hopefully not.
Well, I'll remind you again that a 7.6% increase, the maximum increase for any one house is $275.
So that's
For a state.
a year, right? So that's
20
bucks a month.
20 bucks a
25
month. I
bucks a
mean,
month.
Right.
Oh, yeah, don't get me wrong. I think Harmony's assessments are cheap, okay? I don't think this is a lot of money at all. But I am fully aware that there are an awful lot of people who live here who aren't necessarily in, the financial position we're in. Okay, and that, money's tight. Prices of everything have gone up. they see, why are you raising this more than inflation? Everybody's trying to gouge us. Okay, so, for me personally, I don't think my 1,800 a year is much. What's that, $150 a month? Okay, for a community like this, I think it's a bargain. Okay, but, on the other hand, we're supposed to be representing the 1,600 homes that are here.
We also have a fiduciary responsibility.
Correct. And like I said, we will have more than $1 million left over at the end of next year. At some
Yeah.
point, we gotta spend it, we are not,
Yeah, that's a heck of a
It's-
rainy day.
it's not a,
Well, not
it's
if we
not a
have
piggy
spent
bank to continue to
800,000.
grow.
Mhm. Right, so yeah, there's the alleyway, the repaving, that's every 15 years or so, what's the lifetime of a alleyway paving project like that?
All right, so then after you got that, you also got neighborhood. E is coming up, and then you'll have neighborhood D1 coming up, and neighborhood, so there are others.
We did B in the past though, right?
Well, C1 and C2 was the big one last year, that's
Yeah,
done.
but B was done several years before that.
Yeah, B was probably done.
2014.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, 10
So
years
it's about-
ago.
It's about a 15-year lifespan, so that would make it 2030, so I'm just saying it's not gonna be next year and we're done, it'll be.
Oh, no, I understand that.
Yep, I'm still for the 7.6.
Can I say one more thing? And this is really gonna get me in trouble, but the amount that I pay to live here, it's mind-boggling that I can live in such a beautiful community with so many amenities for, let's see, my house is $1,200 a year. Now, granted, I have a smaller home, an older home, because I'm old and frail, but anyway, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, so
you
we have an election coming up, and 3 of us are going to be up for election. And what if those 3 seats, now I shouldn't even say this, never mind.
It's a workshop, go ahead.
Well, yeah, but so what if those 3 seats go to people who start slashing the budget and going backwards? So at least by having this money in reserve, it'll help offset that.
Well, it's a board, it's full of,
Yeah, we represent the
five
community.
people
and-
and.
I think we'll still get reasonable people, even if they have a different viewpoint,
Yeah.
The fact is, once you're sitting in this seat and you're looking at what needs to be done, you realize stuff has to be done.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yes, I really think if more people understood it, they wouldn't be as up in arms. But
I don't think they don't want to understand it. They just want to complain about it.
yeah,
Just a little bit of that.
well, it's just like with income taxes, people will carry on, but most of them don't know how much they pay in the federal income tax. They just know how much comes out of their check, but they don't, the 1040 tells you how much you paid in the year. So it is a disconnect with communications. And so anyway, I, like Carol, I'm in favor of the 7.6.
Thank you. All right, well, it sounds like 3 of us are.
I have broad shoulders, so that's fine with me. I'll take it.
It's okay, I'll blame you.
Well, I'm not up for reelection.
All right, so do we need to vote or we don't,
we
I mean,
can't
it's a
vote,
workshop.
It's
No,
workshop,
no,
there's.
It's just a consensus.
Yes.
And again, this.
And we
is
can
just-
still
Yeah. this
we
is
can
just our
still
first
get
pass.
community members to put pressure on you to get down to 3.5. So when do we have the final one?
The next meeting.
So we need
Well,
to,
let me
need to
bring
mount
up.
the campaign to put the pressure.
Mark's
We'll
gonna go around.
I'm sorry, one more thing I would like to say in regards to all this.
Come on, people are,
Too many
If
people.
we have money left over, we could consider improving something or adding something that we haven't in the past. Like another basketball court or another pickleball or another boat. I mean, there's so many ways we could enhance what we already have.
Angel, I got a
Well-
question for you. In general, how much do other communities have in reserves for like, just,
Every community's different.
yeah,
It depends on the assets owned.
right, a
Um,
percent, I guess, yeah, it's probably a percentage of.
I'll give you an example, and this is a bad example, but it's the closest thing to you. Celebration is much bigger than Harmony,
Mhm.
right? They have very little assets. Their HOA owns at literally everything.
Sure.
It's mostly common area ponds, a few shade structures, very small. Light poles, benches, stuff like that, just very minimal
Yeah,
stuff.
stuff, that-
And they contribute about 350,000 to their reserves every year. Their reserve study, on the other hand, tells them they should be putting in about $1.5 million a year. And that's never going to happen, obviously. So they put about 350, but also at the end of the day, like Mark just told you, at the end of your day, you're gonna have $1 million. At the end of their day, they'll have about 3 million in their reserves.
And they have many fewer assets and facilities to maintain. No,
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 HOA owns
fewer.
everything
yeah,
over there.
over there,
that's my point.
they have nothing
Yeah,
really to
fewer.
maintain.
Right, but they're gonna have a lot more money.
right,
Yes. that
That's
is
my
correct.
point is,
But they
they'll
also have
have-
a field staff of 25 people. Is that their field staff over there is $1.3 million.
so they have fewer amenities,
so that's where mainly their.
but they
cost-
have more reserves and they have a much bigger field staff than we do to maintain a lot less.
Mhm.
Right, well, and.
Well,
their-
we're
their
pretty well,
contribution, yeah,
All I'm trying to get a point is like, Mark, you say $1 million is a good amount. I don't think it is.
no, I don't.
I think it's very small compared to,
I also have a
What we might
district that
need.
contributed $12,485 a year to their reserve.
Oh, my
And they own
goodness.
everything.
Oh, my
Holy-
goodness.
And the storm came through and wiped them out, and they had no reserves, so they had to take out bank loans. Again, you guys are financially healthy. I'm not gonna say you're not, because you are, and you always have been. But it's subjective on what you wanna do, like, as you look at, if something happens and you have to use that money, okay, what are you gonna cut?
right,
What are you gonna take out of service to be able to maintain and do what you need to do? It's all subjective. No district, I don't care who you are, is ever going to be 100% funded in reserves. It's just not gonna happen. It's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's just not attainable.
Mhm.
Unless you charge the residents an astronomical amount of money. So there is no district out there that I'm aware of, and I've been doing it 12 years. Dave, you've probably been doing it longer too. I've never seen a district that is fully funded in their reserves. Some don't even have reserves, I will tell you that.
Mm.
Some don't. Some have never had a reserve study done. Some think, you know what, we budget every year. If we need it, we budget for it, and that's it. So it's all subjective to what your expectations are in this community, and as a board, what your expectations are for this community.
Yeah.
So,
Some managed golf courses you don't, I mean, there's a.
yeah, there's so many variables.
Right.
The other thing too is, you have districts that increase every year. Doesn't matter, between a 2 to 3,
Yeah.
4% increase, no matter if they need it or not. They
Yeah.
increase every single year at least 3%.
Yeah.
Until I came here, not here in Harmony, but here in the Central Florida region, I've never seen districts who had not raised their assessments in decades.
Hmm.
Celebration being one of them. Celebration did not raise their assessments for 23 years.
Wow. Oh,
But they started with a full build out budget.
Hmm.
So they started paying the top dollar right when they came out of the ground. Well, now the cash cow has ended, right?
Yeah,
They were using their reserves, rainy day money, every year, because your budget increases every year, whether you want it to or not. There's just ancillary costs that increase. So they were using their savings to take that money. And what they didn't realize, because for whatever reason, it was lost on everyone, that when you stop using that money, now guess what? It's already baked into your budget. So the money's got to come from somewhere. So now
Yeah.
you've got a major increase for your residents to get to that, just that level playing field that you've always been in,
it's spinning every year,
on
right?
top of any additional increase that you need to make.
And 23-year-old facilities that need refurbishment.
Correct. So
or
again,
replacing.
all subjective.
Yeah. I mean, just my opinion, I think need to get back to a point where we do increase 2 to 3% every year. If something comes up, we have the reserves, we don't flow it to the residents, we don't increase the budget. That's what we do at the 2 to 3% every year, and we have our, nice reserve amount of money.
That's a solid plan. But it is an election year, so that plan can change next year.
Not for him.
Not really, yeah.
Yeah, well, Lucas and I are off the hook on that one.
Good till 26, right?
Right, right.
So with this budget, you tell me what you want to do. Again, you're gonna go over this again in May before we have to finalize it. Everybody can kind of think in between now and then and decide what you want to do. My recommendation is before we get to a final number to where we have to send out letters, I would just say, make it a realistic number. I've had districts that are like, well, this is the high water mark. Let's raise it $1 million, send out letters, and we know we're gonna cut it down. But I'm like, but why get your residents all worked up over something that you're not realistically going to do?
Right.
Right.
They've gotten very worked up the last 2 years. Nice to not work.
Exactly, for no reason, when you know you're gonna come back and cut it down anyway,
Mhm.
that's the only thing I'm saying.
Okay.
But again, we can change whatever you want in here, and we can change it again in May.
370 reserve other contribution works out to 6%.
Well, from my perspective, I think we've,
I only bring that
I think we've
because
stuck a lot of fat in ponds and in invasive plant maintenance. I mean, we got $205,000 in here and we're gonna spend 95 this year. I appreciate we spent more in the past, but seriously, guys, there's a lot of fat in that one.
Aren't we going to have more that we have to do next year
We have to do.
because of the golf course ponds?
That is correct on the pond side, but the invasive side, we have not tackled that this year. We need to get a vendor out to do an inspection, assessment, and see where we are. We have not done that this year yet. Because the season's coming up that we have to do it, right? Or it's now.
Get deeper into the woods this summer to see how things are looking.
Okay.
I only bring, not just trying to just cut for the sake of cutting, but last year we did, we came in with our target and we added to it, knowing that we had this, a lot of the, potential engineering construction costs for the new facility.
And we don't know what the new facility is gonna be.
We
I mean,
don't,
I can
but
tell you,
that-
I'm not in favor of of doing a new bond and buying this golf maintenance facility,
Oh,
so.
I've always known I only need to get 2 votes and one of them won't be yours.
Well, okay, setting that aside, because we can't buy that facility from reserves we're not talking about increasing the budget to directly fund that. So setting that aside for now, and just in, what we, are saying and what we, tell people we're doing as board members, we made that higher, we intentionally, juiced up the reserve contribution last year for this project that in the end, we may not need to. So that's my lingering thought with why I, keep maybe trying to claw it back. 3.5% or CPI, that definitely, I like that as a goal. And
Yeah.
I agree, the 1.1 sounds like a lot, but if we have one big project, then yes, that can all be wiped out.
Agreed.
That's just why I mean,
All right, so the
6%.
magic number that is gonna go into reserve other is gonna be
412.
Dan,
I like 370, but
Mark's at 305, Joe?
I'm willing to compromise at 5%. So I don't know what that would come out to.
Okay, well, you have two to wanna leave it at 412, one for 305, one for
370,
370,
which is
and Joe,
6%.
I don't know where you landed.
Well,
Yeah.
the,
5% would be
probably about 340.
Okay, so it looks like two of you are the majority at 412.
Well, but.
Oh, I'll stick with that. I'll stick with that because we can always lower it next month if
Absolutely.
I have more time to think
And the
about it.
one
Yep.
next month is one we have to send out to people.
Right.
All right,
Yes.
very good.
So I'm gonna put 412 back in here, and this will stay highlighted for us, top of the conversation at the next meeting.
Sure.
All right, anything else with the budget?
Well, yes, when you send out the letter, is it possible for you to tell people the amount that's gonna go up? Like from $182 to 205?
We can add that in if you want that. It'll have the percentage, but we can also add a dollar amount.
I think
Well,
adding is very important.
Okay,
yeah, I
Alright.
think it'll help some people not be as upset, you know?
We
You know,
should
like,
have we should have a
Yes.
monthly
The
amount.
letter that we sent does include that. Your last amount,
Right.
and the proposed amount will include
in
that.
my case, I just go out to dinner one less time a month, you know, and to me, that's worth it to live here. But, I know everybody looks at things differently, so.
I would like to see a monthly amount.
an annual and a monthly.
Yeah, show people what it costs. Question, I had a question on the assessments. I asked you, but it got lost in the shuffle. In H1, the 25-foot wide lots,
It's Rosewood.
those are townhouses.
Brenda, was it the northern tip?
It's, as you're looking at Harmony from an aerial viewpoint, it's all the way to the west end, right off 192. That's Rosewood. It's not town,
25-foot lot, so, but it's single-family homes.
correct.
Ah, so then my question becomes, where are we putting the new townhomes being built there? Are they gonna go
can answer that.
multifamily?
That I don't know.
I mean,
Well, they're attached homes, just like the townhouses are, just like Ashley Park is.
Well, yeah, well, the rest of
But they're
H1
multifamily.
is detached, single family.
Mhm.
Alright.
So,
no, well, here's where I'm going. You know, I would like the board to codify that multifamily applies to townhomes, to triplexes, to apartments, to condos. It's just one flat rate for all of them. That way, we've got no question in the future when, you
Well, we
know.
have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. I don't think that that's appropriate because we have people.
We
more
have
people
it
using-
now and we have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom.
not in the assessment.
The assessment's right here. There's only one.
Right.
A1, multifamily.
That's why we want to change it.
And
Why?
those are the options that you all looked at as far as if you want to change your methodology, which we could do next year, if that's something you all want to do. It's a little too late this year.
What about square footage? I mean, maybe that's something to discuss in the next meeting, but square footage as
Or what, multifamily?
no, square footage as a way of assigning methodology, as assigning assessments.
You realize that you will be raising the assessments on the majority of residents, okay? The majority of residents will pay more, okay? Hey, you and I subsidize, and the people in the states especially, subsidize a fair bit of what, you know, a lot more people pay. Okay, I mean, from a purely selfish point of view, of course, I'd like mine to go down. From a pragmatic point of view, to be honest, you and I couldn't vote on that because we'd be amongst the biggest beneficiaries and we'd have to recuse ourselves. So, you know, it's a bit of a catch-22 there.
I'm not sure, I mean, I'm not sure that flows through. Pardon me, I think if we do it I'd like to see what the analysis would be by square footage, because the people behind me are gonna be paying a lot less than I'm paying.
And I think when y'all get next year, or once this budget season's over, we can schedule a workshop or however you all want to do it. And they can discuss the different methodology options for you guys and what it looks like. And they'll be able to lay it out for you. Because right now, the way that it's set up,
Honestly, changing the methodology would open a gigantic can of worms. I mean, you think it's hard to explain to people the, you know, 3.5% equals
agree.
this much money?
You're gonna have,
My God, every single person in town is gonna have a different assessment, and they're all gonna say, why? Why? What's going on here? You know, it's a
Well,
recipe
that's,
for disaster.
so we can look at that as options as we get through this budget cycle.
But as of right now, the new townhomes going in are just gonna get that multifamily rate.
To my knowledge,
Okay,
but
Oh.
I can't definitively.
So even
speak
though
on
they're
that.
not in, they're located in neighborhood H1, but they're still gonna be assessed as multifamily.
Brenda,
well, they
I-
are multifamily.
Yeah, if they're considered multifamily, then
Okay,
that's how.
well,
they be
but,
assessed.
so on the assessment, schedule, there's, in neighborhood H1, there's only single-family lines. And the only multifamily line is neighborhood H1. So there's, from this, it's not really clear what someone that's moving into a multifamily in H1 is gonna be paying.
Yeah, that would need to be added. I don't think that was contemplated.
Yeah, well, I mean,
in-
there, I
in
see this
the-
note here on H1 from Elizabeth Langston, added to tax roll per developer.
Yes, so you've been getting that money from the developer, it'll just switch hands once, the
Right.
parcel sells, it'll just go from the developer funded to.
Right, no, I understand, okay, so. And I mean, maybe that's the issue, these 25 lot. This 25 lot, size in neighborhood H1, I mean. Are
Well, if
there
those
any
are si-
actual detached homes there on 25-foot lots, or is this a plot talking about what's in reality multifamily?
Yeah, I think that needs to be clarified.
Yeah, and I think Leah clarified it, but she was working with the gentleman, so I don't know, but we will.
Yeah, well, let's make sure we figure that one out.
And I'm not sure everything in Rosewood is detached aside from,
Up until this, what they've started building that, some of them are like perpendicular to the road or parallel to the road, and then they have little sidewalks going between them and an alley that wraps.
Yeah, they're not
behind,
attached.
but they're still attached,
Yeah, they're all-
up until Partisan started building.
Okay.
So. Anything else regarding this?
All
All right, Brenda, will you save this version and email it to me? I know we didn't change anything, but I just want to make sure we're current on what we're doing.
Yep, I sure will.
Thank you.
That's
Or-
gotta be a first.
What?
No changes? I mean, I remember when I did it, we went through and like
Yeah.
had all these arguments, changed this by 2000 and. Wow, very
Try to
good.
get as
And-
much in there realistically before I present it to you all.
And
that I
if
think-
Very good job.
And if, yes, excellent, and if you throw in, assuming they haven't paid off their bond service, then it works out to about 4% overall.
Yeah, if you look over to the right, it'll tell you your overall percentage, because some people have paid off their debt, some people haven't. I mean, you're looking at some of those are only gonna see a 1.6% increase. Even though the overall on O and M is 7.6, because the debt doesn't change. So if you paid off your bond, you're only gonna see a 1.6% increase. Instead of a 7.6.
Yeah, but let's figure out where these townhomes go
no,
because
it's
if-
the other
if
way
they're-
around.
No, if you paid off your bond, then you're already paying a smaller amount. You'll see your change will be the full 7%. If you have this that you've not paid off, it's a smaller overall percentage.
Correct, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
yes, that is correct.
Okay. Yeah.
And it'll show you off to the right.
Yes.
If you follow the chart over, it
Yep.
tells you.
And we're approved, we're moving forward with a 4% overall.
Right.
That's
Correct. Cool.
So it's not a whole lot more than 3.5.
Keep pushing it, Mark.
It's not. I did find out from Liz, which we'll talk about, based on this, it will be a new methodology. You can do an equalized methodology across everything for a new bond. So-
Very good. All righty. Do I need a motion to close or just
No, it's
close?
just a
It's
workshop.
Well, everybody take 10,
15,
take 10,
12.
take 12. All right, 12-minute break.
Is it the same Zoom call?
No, I
The
had
same?
to,
Yeah, Joe, I will have to end the Zoom, so I have to reconnect for the meeting.
So do I have to sign in on a different number?
No, it'll be the same number, just I need to.
Oh,
end the
okay.
meeting and,
So just leave my iPad sitting here? Okay, very good.
Just a couple minutes.
All right, good. Thanks. See you in a bit.